For my 30th, I reserved a table for 12 at my favorite restaurant. I sat there alone for 3 hours. The waiter kept asking if my party was coming. At 10 p.m., I paid for the bread basket and left. The next morning, my sister posted best night ever with my entire family at a bar downtown. Hey everyone, my name's Brian. I'm 30 years old now. Well, just barely. And I need to tell you about the worst birthday I've ever had. Actually, scratch that. I need to tell you about the worst birthday anyone has ever had in the history of birthdays, including that kid in middle school who threw up on his own cake during the happy birthday song. At least that kid had people singing to him. Let me back up a little. I grew up in a family of 5. There's my mom, Jolene, my dad, Hank, my older sister Tully who's 33, and my younger brother Emmett who's 27. On paper we probably looked like any normal suburban family. 2-car garage, a golden retriever named Biscuit, church on Easter whether we wanted to go or not. But here's the thing about families that look normal on paper. Paper doesn't talk. Paper doesn't show you the way a mother's eyes skip right over one kid to land on the other 2. Paper doesn't capture the specific silence that fills a room when you realize that your presence in it doesn't actually register to the people who are supposed to love you the most. I was the middle child, and I know what you're thinking. Oh great, another middle child with a victim complex. And honestly, I used to think that too. I spent years telling myself I was being dramatic, that I was imagining things, that my family loved me the same as everyone else, and I was just too sensitive. That's what they told me, anyway. Brian, you're too sensitive. Brian, you're reading into things. Brian, why do you always have to make everything about you? That last one was my mom's favorite. She'd pull it out like a Swiss Army knife any time I tried to express a feeling that wasn't convenient for her. Tully was the golden child. She could do no wrong. She got the lead in the school play, and my parents rented out a restaurant for the cast party. She graduated college with a 3.2 GPA, and they threw her a backyard bash that looked like something out of a home renovation show. When she got engaged to her now husband, Coulter, my parents literally cried with joy. I'm talking full waterworks, tissues, the whole production. And look, Tully's great. I don't have beef with Tully directly. She's not a bad person. She's just someone who's never had to wonder whether she matters. And that kind of confidence builds a very specific kind of obliviousness. Emmett, meanwhile, was the baby. The fun one. The one who could charm his way out of a speeding ticket and into a free appetizer at any restaurant in town. Emmett was the kid who broke a window playing baseball and somehow convinced my parents it was a growth experience. He got average grades, bounced between jobs, but none of that mattered because Emmett was entertaining. He made people laugh. And in my family, being entertaining was worth more than being reliable. Then there was me, Brian, the one who showed up, did his homework, mowed the lawn without being asked, went to community college because my parents said they couldn't afford all 3 of us even though they paid for Tully's full ride. I drove 45 minutes to fix my parents' plumbing for free. I remembered birthdays. I sent Mother's Day flowers. I called every Sunday, even when nobody picked up. I was the wallpaper. Functional. Always there. Never noticed until someone decided to redecorate. By 29, I was doing okay. Regional coordinator at a logistics company, decent apartment on the east side, a solid group of friends, and a cat named Diesel who was definitely plotting my demise, but at least he was consistent. For my 30th birthday, I decided to do something I'd never done. I was going to ask my family to show up for me. Not a surprise party or a destination trip. Just dinner at my favorite restaurant, Rosalind's, this cozy Italian place downtown where the owner, Gemma, had gotten to know me over the years and always saved me the corner booth. I called my mom 6 weeks in advance. 6 weeks. I told her I was turning 30, which shouldn't have been news, but with my family you never know, and that I wanted to have dinner with everyone at Rosalind's on Saturday the 12th. She said, and I quote, "Oh, that sounds nice, honey. Let me check with everyone." I followed up 2 weeks later. She said everyone was in. I followed up again 1 week before. She confirmed again. I even sent a group text to the family chat that I was always muted in. I said, "Hey everyone, just a reminder, dinner Saturday at Rosalind's, 7 o'clock, reserved a table for 12. Can't wait to see you all." Tully hearted the message. Emmett sent a thumbs up. My dad didn't respond, but that was normal because my dad treats text messages like they're written in ancient Sumerian. I should explain the 12. I'd invited my parents, Tully and Coulter, Emmett and his girlfriend Waverly, my Aunt Bethany who I'd always been close with, and a few of my own friends. My buddy Deacon, my coworker Sloan, and my neighbor Harlan, who's 72 years old and the best poker player I've ever met. 12 people total, including me. A good number. Not too big, not too small. Just right for a corner booth and a few extra tables pushed together. I got to Rosalind's at 6:45. Gemma had set everything up beautifully. Long table, candles, a little handwritten card that said, "Happy Birthday, Brian," in her loopy handwriting. I sat down. I ordered water. I checked my phone. 6:55. No messages. 7 o'clock came. Nobody walked through the door. 7:15. I texted Deacon, who said he'd come down with a stomach bug. Fair enough. Sloan got called into work. Harlan's knee was acting up. People have lives. But my family, my actual blood relatives, the people who confirmed multiple times. Nothing. No texts. No calls. Just silence and me at a table for 12 while the waiter, a young kid named Boyd, kept coming by with this painfully sympathetic expression. "Is your party running late?" he asked at 7:45. "Yeah," I said. "Traffic, probably." I ordered the bread basket because I needed something to do with my hands. By 8:45, Boyd stopped asking. He just quietly refilled my water and gave me a look that was the facial equivalent of a hug. By 9:30, the restaurant was clearing out. At 10 o'clock, I flagged Boyd down, paid for the bread basket and my 4 glasses of water, left a $40 tip because that kid deserved hazard pay, and walked to my car. I sat behind the wheel for 20 minutes, not crying, not screaming, just staring, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Because that's what you do when your family ghosts you. You don't get angry first. First, you wonder what's wrong with you. I drove home. I fed Diesel. I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone. Instagram. My sister Tully had posted a carousel of photos at 11:30 the night before, about 90 minutes after I'd left Rosalind's alone. The caption read, "Best night ever," with a string of emojis. And the photos. Oh, the photos. My entire family. My mom, my dad, Tully, Coulter, Emmett, Waverly. All of them. At a bar downtown called Sullivan's, grinning like they didn't have a care in the world. There were drinks on the table. There was confetti. In one of the pictures, Emmett had his arm around my mom, and she was laughing harder than I'd seen her laugh in years. In another, my dad was doing a toast, holding up a glass of something dark and amber with a smile that reached his eyes. They'd all gone out together. On my birthday. Without me. And they'd had the best night ever. I stared at that Instagram post for a long time. Zoomed in on every face looking for even a flicker of guilt. A moment of hesitation. A sideways glance that said, maybe we shouldn't be here right now. Nothing. Not one trace of remorse on a single face. I called my mom at 10 in the morning. She picked up on the 4th ring with that breezy, post-fun night voice. "Mom," I said, "did you forget something last night?" There was a pause. I could hear her coffee maker doing its thing in the background, that rhythmic gurgling sound that I'd grown up hearing every morning. "What do you mean?" she said. "My birthday dinner. At Rosalind's. The one you confirmed 3 times. Another pause. Longer this time. And then she laughed. Not a guilty laugh. Not an "oh no I messed up" laugh. An actual, dismissive, almost irritated laugh. "Oh, Brian. Honey. That. Okay, so here's what happened. Tully and Coulter surprised us with reservations at Sullivan's for their anniversary. It was a last-minute thing, and we didn't want to be rude, so we figured we'd just celebrate your birthday another time. I was going to call you, but it got so hectic, and then we were already out, and you know how it goes." I let that sit for a second. Let it really marinate. "You were going to call me," I repeated. "Yes. I just got caught up. You know how Tully gets when she plans something. She's like a freight train. Mom." Tully hearted my text about the dinner. She knew about it. Well, I'm sure she didn't mean to overlap. These things happen, Brian. Don't make it into a whole thing. Don't make it into a whole thing. There it was. The family motto, as far as I was concerned. Brian, don't make it into a whole thing. Translation, your feelings are inconvenient, so please swallow them so the rest of us can continue having a lovely time. I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't say anything dramatic. I just said, "Okay, Mom," and hung up. And something shifted in me right then. It was like a door that had been slowly swinging shut for 30 years finally clicked into the frame. I heard the latch. I felt it. I tried my dad next. Went straight to voicemail. I tried Emmett. He picked up and immediately launched into a story about how great Sullivan's was. how the bartender had done this thing with smoked ice, and how Waverly had gotten so tipsy she tried to order a quesadilla at an Italian bar. He talked for 3 solid minutes before I got a word in. Emmett, you missed my birthday dinner. Oh, yeah. Mom said you were cool with rescheduling. Mom said what? She said you were fine with it. That you understood about Tully's anniversary thing. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Of course my mother had rewritten the narrative before the night was even over, turned my absence into my choice, made it sound like I'd graciously stepped aside so the family could celebrate something more important. Because that's what I was supposed to do. That's what I'd always done. Step aside. Make room. Be understanding. Emmett, I sat at that restaurant alone for 3 hours. Nobody called me. Nobody texted me. Boyd the waiter was the only human being who acknowledged my existence. Silence. Then who's Boyd? I almost laughed. Almost. Never mind, Emmett. I texted Tully. Kept it short. Hey, saw the Sullivans' pictures. That was the night of my birthday dinner. The one you confirmed. She read it. I could see the little check mark. She didn't respond for 4 hours, and when she did, it was this. Sorry, Brian. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing for our anniversary. We can do your dinner another time. No need to guilt trip. No need to guilt trip. There it was again. Me expressing a legitimate feeling was repackaged as me being manipulative. The trick of it was so clean, so practiced, that I don't think they even realized they were doing it anymore. It was reflexive, like blinking. I didn't respond. I put my phone in a drawer and went for a 2-hour walk, hands in my pockets, watching other people live their lives. When I got home, the family group chat had 17 new messages. Not about me. Not about my birthday. Tully posted a kitchen backsplash photo. My mom responded with heart eye emojis. Emmett posted a taco meme. Life had moved on. My 30th birthday had been absorbed into the current like a pebble tossed into a river. That week was rough. Work, home, feed Diesel, couch, repeat, all in this emotional fog I couldn't shake. On Thursday, my Aunt Bethany called. She was the one family member who'd had a real reason for missing dinner. Her flight from Portland got delayed, and she'd texted me that afternoon to let me know and sent a birthday card with a $50 gift card to Rosalind's. That's the kind of person Bethany is. Brian, honey, how was the dinner? She asked. I told her. All of it. The empty table, the 3 hours, the Instagram post, the phone calls, the gaslighting. She listened without interrupting, which is something most people in my family are physically incapable of doing. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Brian, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. This isn't the first time they've done this to you. This is just the first time you're seeing it clearly. And she was right, because I started scrolling through the mental archive. My high school graduation, where my parents left early for Emmett's Little League game. My community college graduation, which nobody attended because of Tully's engagement party. My 25th birthday, absorbed into a family barbecue where I manned the grill. The promotion at 27 that my mom dismissed with, "That's nice, honey," before pivoting to talk about Coulter's new truck. Pattern after pattern. Not soap opera cruelty. Just this quiet, consistent erasure. Bethany said something else that night that stuck with me. She said, "You've spent 30 years trying to earn something that was never for sale. Their attention, their approval. It was always allocated before you ever walked into the room, and no amount of lawn mowing or Sunday phone calls was going to change the math." I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sad about my family. I felt something else. Something sharper, cleaner, and a lot more useful. I felt done. Not angry done. Not scorched earth, burn the bridges, post a rant on social media done. Just done. Quietly, permanently, architecturally done. Like the foundation had cracked and I could finally see that the building was never going to hold. And instead of trying to patch it one more time, I was going to walk out the front door and start building somewhere else. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't send a dramatic text. I just stopped. Stopped calling on Sundays. Stopped responding to the group chat. Stopped driving 45 minutes to fix things that a plumber could handle. Stopped sending flowers. Stopped showing up to events I wasn't really invited to so much as informed of. And here's the thing that tells you everything you need to know about my place in that family. It took them almost 3 weeks to notice. 3 weeks. 21 days of silence from their son, their brother, and the first person to say anything was Emmett, and only because his kitchen sink was leaking and I was usually his first call. "Hey bro, quick question about pipes. his voicemail said. Not, "Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" Just pipes. I didn't call back. The first 2 months of silence were harder than I expected. Not because I missed the dysfunction. I didn't miss being overlooked or minimized or treated like the family's emotional spare tire. What I missed was the hope. For 30 years I'd been carrying around this stubborn, irrational belief that one day, if I was just good enough, reliable enough, patient enough, they'd see me. Really see me. And letting go of that hope felt like losing a limb. A useless limb, sure. One that hadn't worked properly in years. But it was still attached, and removing it still hurt. I threw myself into work, which sounds like a cliche, but in my case it actually paid off. My boss at the logistics company, a guy named Riggins who looked like a retired linebacker and talked like a philosophy professor, had been pushing me to apply for a director-level position. I'd been dragging my feet because that voice in the back of my head, the one that sounded suspiciously like my mother, kept saying, "You? A director? Be realistic." But something about being completely abandoned on your 30th birthday recalibrates your internal compass. When the people who are supposed to believe in you don't, you've got two choices. You either stop believing in yourself, or you decide their opinion doesn't count anymore. I chose the second one, aggressively, with the kind of energy that only comes from sitting alone at a birthday table watching a 19-year-old waiter feel sorry for you. I applied for the position. I spent 2 weeks preparing for the interview. I bought a new suit, which felt ridiculous until I put it on and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and thought, for the first time in a long time, that guy looks like he knows what he's doing. I aced the interview, not because I was the most qualified person in the room, though I might have been, but because I walked in there with absolutely nothing to lose. When you've sat alone at a table for 3 hours on your birthday, and the worst has already happened to your ego, a job interview feels like a vacation. I got the position. Significant raise. My own office with a door that closed, which doesn't sound like much until you've spent 4 years at a desk in an open floor plan next to a guy who clips his toenails at his desk. Yes, at his desk. In the open. Like it was a normal thing to do. Anyway, Director of Regional Operations. That was me now. Riggins took me out for a beer the night I got the offer. "You know what changed?" he said, pointing his bottle at me like a professor with a pointer. "You stopped apologizing for being in the room." He wasn't wrong. Around the same time, I started doing something I'd never really done before. I started investing in friendships. Real ones. Not the surface level, "Hey, let's grab a beer sometime" friendships that never actually materialize, but the kind where you show up for each other and it doesn't feel like a transaction. Deacon, who'd missed my birthday because of the stomach bug, felt terrible and insisted on taking me out for a belated celebration at a hole-in-the-wall barbecue place. He listened to the whole story, and when I finished he said, "Brian, those people don't deserve your breadbasket, man. That breadbasket was too good for them." I laughed harder than I had in months. Deacon became my person, not romantic. "I will help you move a couch at 2 a.m. kind." We started weekly dinners, alternating who cooked. He was terrible at it. The man once served me chicken that was burned outside and frozen in the middle. I asked if he'd cooked it with a blowtorch in good intentions, and he said, "Close." Blowtorch and YouTube. Sloan from work became another anchor. She'd gotten the marketing director role around the same time, and we became an unofficial support duo over pre-work coffees. Sharp, deadpan funny, zero tolerance for nonsense. Even Harlan, my 72-year-old neighbor, became more than a poker buddy. He showed up one evening with a casserole and a bottle of whiskey and said, "I heard you had a rough birthday. Let's eat our feelings." He told me about his own father forgetting his 18th birthday and said, "The best revenge against people who don't see you is building a life so bright they need sunglasses." Harlan had a way with words for a guy who spent most of his time yelling at squirrels. Months 3 through 5, I was settling into the new role and killing it. We landed a major distribution contract I'd been chasing, and Riggins said it was the smoothest client acquisition in a decade. My confidence was growing steadily, like a plant you water every day and one morning think, when did that get so tall? I also went back to Rosalind's. Alone. On purpose. I sat at the counter this time, and Gemma put a plate of bruschetta in front of me without me ordering. On the house, birthday boy. Belated. She didn't ask what happened that night. She'd seen the empty table. She'd seen Boyd clearing place settings one by one. I ordered the carbonara I'd planned to have on my birthday, And for the first time in 5 months, I felt like myself. Not the version performing for a family that wasn't watching, but the actual version. By month 6, my family had started to notice the silence. Not because they missed me, mind you, because they needed things. My mom called because the bathroom faucet was dripping. I let it go to voicemail. Emmett texted because he wanted help moving a couch. I didn't respond. My dad, in a stunning display of effort, sent me a text that said, "Call your mother." No hello. No how are you. Just a command, like I was a customer service representative who'd been neglecting a ticket. Tully was the most interesting one. She sent me a long message that started with, "I don't know why you've been so distant lately," and ended with, "I hope you know this is really hurting, Mom." The entire message was about my mother's feelings. Not once did it occur to Tully to ask about mine. It was a masterpiece of misdirection, honestly. If guilt trips were an Olympic sport, my sister would have brought home the gold. I didn't respond to any of it. Not out of pettiness. Not as a power move. I just didn't have anything to say. I'd spent 30 years talking to people who weren't listening, and I'd finally run out of words for an audience that was never in their seats. Aunt Bethany, meanwhile, was the one person I kept in the loop. She called me every week, sent me articles she thought I'd find interesting, and mailed me a package of homemade cookies when I got the promotion because, as she put it, someone in this family needs to act like a human being, and I've accepted that it's going to be me. She also told me something during one of our calls that planted a seed. "Your grandfather," she said, meaning her and my mom's father, "left some things behind when he passed. There's a family trust. Nothing enormous, but it's there. Your mom's been the executor since he died. You should probably look into what you're entitled to." I felt something cold settle in my stomach when she said that. Not fear exactly. More like the feeling you get when you turn over a rock and see something moving underneath it. I filed that away. Not because I was scheming. Not yet. I just thought it was interesting that in 30 years, nobody had ever mentioned a family trust to me. Let me tell you how I found out about the trust. Because the details matter, and I want you to have the full picture before we get to the part where everything comes together. After Aunt Bethany mentioned my grandfather's estate, I didn't do anything about it for about 2 weeks. I was busy with work, busy with the new life I was building, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to open another door that might have my family's fingerprints all over it. But the thought kept nagging at me, the way a loose thread on a sweater nags at you until you finally pull it and the whole sleeve unravels. So I did some digging. My grandfather, Walter, had passed when I was 19. He ran a small chain of hardware stores in the Midwest and retired comfortably. He was kind to me. He'd take me fishing as a kid and say things like, "Brian, the ones who don't make noise are usually the ones holding everything together." I didn't understand then. I do now. I called an estate attorney named Sullivan Pratt. Operates out of a small office above a sandwich shop, which doesn't scream elite legal representation, but Deacon swore by him. Sullivan leaned back in his chair, tapped his pen against his notepad, and said, "Let me pull the probate records. If there's a trust and you're a named beneficiary, it'll be in the public filings." 1 week later, Sullivan called me back into his office. He had a folder on his desk about 2 inches thick. "So," he said, "here's what I found. Your grandfather established a living trust before he died. It named 3 grandchildren as beneficiaries, Tully, Emmett, and you. The trust was funded with the proceeds from the sale of his hardware stores, some investments, and the house. Total value at the time of his death was roughly $1.2 million. $1.2 million, split 3 ways." I sat there doing the math in my head while Sullivan flipped through pages. "Your mother was named as trustee," he continued. "Her job was to manage the assets and distribute them according to the terms, which stated that each grandchild would receive their share upon turning 25. I was 30. I'd been 30 for 6 months. I had never received a cent. "Now here's where it gets complicated," Sullivan said, and I could tell from his voice that complicated was his professional way of saying really messed up. The trust had specific language about equal distribution. 1/3 to each grandchild. No conditions, no exceptions. But when Sullivan pulled the financial records, here's what he found. Tully had received her share at 25. A lump sum of approximately $400,000, which she and Coulter had used as a down payment on their house. The one with the kitchen backsplash she kept posting about. Emmett had received his share at 25 as well. This had gone toward various things, a car, some travel, and a chunk that my parents had held on to for him because, and I love this, they didn't trust him to manage it wisely. Which meant my parents had access to a portion of Emmett's trust money and were using it for who knows what. And Brian's share? According to the records, it had been distributed, on paper, to an account that was in my name but that I had no knowledge of and had never accessed. An account that, upon further investigation, had been systematically drawn down over the past 5 years through a series of transfers back to the trust's main account, which my mother controlled. Sullivan put it plainly. Your mother took your inheritance. She distributed it on paper to satisfy the legal requirements, then funneled it back to an account she controlled. Whether she spent it, redirected it, or is sitting on it, I can't tell you yet. But what I can tell you is that this is a breach of fiduciary duty and potentially fraud. I sat in that office for a long time after he said that. The sandwich shop downstairs was making something with garlic and the smell was drifting up through the vents, which felt absurd given the gravity of what I'd just learned. My mother had stolen my inheritance. Not figuratively, not emotionally, literally. She had taken $400,000 that my grandfather had specifically set aside for me and made it disappear. I thought about Grandpa Walter. The fishing trips, the quiet wisdom, the way he'd squeeze my shoulder and say, "You're gonna be just fine, kid." He tried to take care of me even after he was gone, and my mother had intercepted it like a cornerback jumping a route. I told Sullivan to do whatever needed to be done. He laid out the options. We could approach my mother informally first and demand restitution, or we could go straight to legal action. I chose a middle path. I wanted documentation of everything first. Every transfer, every account statement, every paper trail. I wanted an airtight case before anyone in my family knew I was looking. It took about 6 weeks to compile everything. During that time, I kept up my silence with the family. My mom's calls had become more frequent, not because she was worried about me, but because the faucet had progressed from a drip to a stream, and she apparently couldn't conceive of calling an actual plumber. Tully had sent another message, this one slightly more pointed. "Brian, your behavior is really selfish. Mom is stressed, and you can't even return a phone call." Selfish. The woman who took my entire family to a bar on my birthday was calling me selfish. The irony was so thick you could serve it on a plate at Rosalind's. I kept quiet and pulled in the people I trusted. Aunt Bethany was livid, but not surprised. Walter didn't trust Jolene either. Toward the end, she said. Deacon kept me sane with weekly dinners and terrible cooking. Sloan connected me with her uncle, a forensic accountant named Landry, who wore bow ties and spoke exclusively in spreadsheets. Landry traced every dollar. $400,000, distributed to a shadow account in my name, then siphoned in monthly transfers of $2,000 to $8,000 over 5 years. Some went to my parents' household expenses. Some went to payments on Tully's second car. A significant chunk covered debts Emmett had racked up. My money, my grandfather's gift to me, used to pay for Tully's car and Emmett's mistakes and my parents' lifestyle. While I was driving 45 minutes to fix their plumbing for free. While I was sitting alone at a table for 12. While they were having the best night ever. Sullivan compiled the final report and sat down with me one more time. "You have a clear case," he said. "Breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, conversion. You can file a civil suit, and, depending on the district attorney's interest, there may be criminal implications as well." I asked him what the smart play was. He smiled the way lawyers smile when they know the answer is satisfying. "Send a demand letter first. Certified mail. To your mother, as trustee. Lay out everything we've found. Give her 30 days to repay the full amount plus interest. If she doesn't, we file. And if she tries to negotiate, she won't have much room. The paper trail is clean. Landry's work is airtight. She either pays or she explains this to a judge." I authorized the letter. Sullivan drafted it that week. 12 pages, single-spaced, detailing every transfer, every account, every dollar. Professional, cold, and devastating. The letter went out on a Tuesday. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. And then I waited. The letter arrived at my parents' house on a Thursday. I know because Sullivan tracked the delivery, and also because my phone started ringing approximately 47 minutes later. That's how long it took my mother to read 12 pages of documented financial fraud and decide the best move was to call the son she'd been robbing and play the victim. I didn't answer. She called 4 times. Then my dad called, alarming because he uses the phone function of his phone about as often as I use the decorative towels in my bathroom. then Tully, then Emmett. The muted group chat exploded. 14 messages. 22. 31. I let it breathe for 24 hours. Then I called my mother back, on speaker, with Sullivan listening. Brian. Her voice was different. Gone was the breezy, dismissive tone I'd heard my entire life. This was tight. Controlled. The voice of someone who's been caught and is trying to calculate the exit routes. Brian, we need to talk about this letter. Okay, I said. Let's talk. This is a misunderstanding. The trust money was used for the family. For everyone. Your father and I were managing it responsibly, and we always planned to make it right. Make it right, I repeated. For $100,000, Mom. Over 5 years. You drained my inheritance to pay for Tully's car, Emmett's debts, and your household bills. When exactly were you planning to make that right? It wasn't like that. You're making it sound so calculated. We were struggling, Brian. Your father's retirement didn't cover everything. We had expenses. You had my money. It was family money. No, Mom. It was my money. Grandpa Walter left it to me. Specifically to me. In a legal document with my name on it. And you signed papers creating an account in my name, deposited the funds, and then transferred them out over 60 monthly installments. That's not struggling. That's a plan. The silence on her end was long enough that I could hear the coffee maker again. That stupid gurgling sound. She finally said, What do you want, Brian? Full restitution. For $100,000 plus interest. Sullivan's letter outlines the terms. You have 30 days. We don't have that kind of money just sitting around. Then you'd better figure it out, because the alternative is a courtroom, and I promise you a judge is going to be a lot less patient than I've been for the last 30 years. She started crying. My mother crying used to be the most effective weapon in her arsenal. It could stop any argument and make me feel like the worst person alive for having needs. But sitting in my apartment with Sullivan's letter on the counter and a cat aggressively chewing a shoelace, I felt nothing. Not cruelty, not satisfaction. Just clarity. The tears weren't grief. They were strategy. 30 days, Mom, I said, and hung up. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Not for me. For them. Tully called me in a fury, demanding to know how I could do this to the family. I calmly explained that the family had done this to me, and that I was simply requesting the return of stolen property. She pivoted to the classic, Grandpa would be ashamed of you. I almost laughed. Tully, Grandpa specifically left me that money because he loved me. Mom stole it. If anyone should be worried about what Grandpa would think, it's not me. She hung up on me, which was a nice change of pace from being hung up on. Emmett took a different approach, calling genuinely confused. Bro, I had no idea. That's messed up. I told him part of my money covered his debts. Long pause. I didn't ask her to do that. I believed him. Emmett was oblivious, not dishonest. My dad sent a handwritten letter saying, Your mother made mistakes. But tearing this family apart with lawyers won't fix anything. Come home. I respected the effort, but not the implication that I was the one doing the tearing. Aunt Bethany, meanwhile, was doing her own work behind the scenes. She'd been talking to Tully and Emmett separately, not to advocate for me, but to make sure they understood the gravity of the situation. She told me that Tully had initially been defensive, but had gone quiet after Bethany walked her through the financial records and pointed out that her house down payment had come through cleanly while mine had been gutted. Emmett, to his credit, started asking hard questions for what might have been the first time in his life. On day 26, my mother's attorney contacted Sullivan with a proposal. Full restitution paid in 2 installments. $200,000 within 60 days, the rest within 6 months, plus interest. The money would come from my parents' savings, a home equity loan, and, in a twist I didn't see coming, a contribution from Tully and Coulter, who felt guilty enough to offer equity from the house partially funded by my family's dysfunction. Sullivan tightened the timeline, added late penalties, and their side agreed. I signed the agreement on a Wednesday in Sullivan's office. It smelled like roasted turkey from the sandwich shop. Felt oddly appropriate. The money started coming in. First installment, right on time. Second installment, 2 weeks early. I deposited it into an account at a bank that no one in my family has access to, and I sat with the balance on my screen for a while, thinking about Grandpa Walter and his fishing trips and his quiet way of loving the people who didn't make noise. I used some of the money to pay off my car. I put a chunk into investments that Sloane's Uncle Landry helped me set up, because if a forensic accountant can't help you build a solid portfolio, nobody can. I donated $10,000 to a local youth mentoring program because Grandpa Walter would have liked that. And I used some of it to put a down payment on a small house on the east side of town, 3 bedrooms, a backyard big enough for Diesel to plot his territorial expansion, and a porch where Harlan could sit and yell at squirrels whenever he wanted. As for my family, my relationship with my mother is essentially non-existent. She sends me a text on holidays. Short, formal, the emotional equivalent of a form letter. I don't respond, and she doesn't follow up. My dad and I exchanged a few words at Bethany's Thanksgiving last year. He looked older, smaller. He shook my hand and said, "You look good, son." I said thanks. That was it. It was enough. Tully and I have a cautious, slowly rebuilding thing happening. She sent me a long email about 3 months after the settlement. Not an apology exactly, but something close. She said she'd been doing therapy and was starting to see how the family dynamics had shaped her in ways she wasn't proud of. She said she was sorry about the birthday. She said she was sorry about a lot of things. I told her I appreciated it and that the door was open, but it was going to take time. She said she understood. Emmett sends me memes. That's his love language, and I've accepted it. Aunt Bethany comes over for dinner every other Sunday. She brings dessert. Harlan brings whiskey. Deacon brings whatever culinary disaster he's attempted that week. Sloane joins when she can. We sit around my table, the one in my new house, and we eat and talk and laugh, and nobody has to wonder whether they belong there. Nobody has to check their phone to see if people are coming. Nobody sits alone. Last month, I went back to Rosalind's for the first time since everything settled. Gemma was there, same as always, wiping down the counter and humming something old and Italian. She looked up when I walked in and smiled like she'd been expecting me. "Table for one?" she asked. "Table for one," I said. She sat me at the counter, brought me the carbonara without asking, and put a candle on the table. A little one, just enough light to eat by. "Happy belated birthday, Brian," she said. I ate every bite, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like something was missing. The table was exactly the right size. The company was exactly enough. And the bread was, as always, outstanding. 30 years I spent trying to fit into a family that didn't have room for me. Turns out the answer was never to squeeze harder. It was to build my own table. And honestly, the food's better here.